Think you know Freddy Krueger? Of course you do. The scarred and melted face, the battered fedora, the razor-sharp blades slicing through the air, and that iconic red and green sweater. He's the wisecracking, smart-mouthed dream demon who completely owned 80s horror, hunting terrified teenagers in the one place they could never, ever escape, their own minds. He's more than just a character. He's a full-blown pop culture fixture, a Halloween costume, a lunchbox decal, a symbol of an entire era of horror filmmaking. He's such a permanent part of our collective consciousness that he's almost comforting. We know his lines, we anticipate his kills, but that familiarity is a mask, hiding a much more disturbing face underneath.
Hey, Nancy! No running in the hallway.
The Freddy we know and quote is a phantom, a pale imitation of the original terror that gave him life. But what if I told you that the Freddy we see on screen is a deliberately watered-down version of a much more horrifying truth? A truth that Hollywood was, ironically, too scared to fully embrace. A truth rooted not in fantasy, but in a baffling and tragic real-life medical mystery where perfectly healthy people were suddenly and inexplicably dying from their own nightmares. This is the unbelievable story of the terror that was deemed too intense for the silver screen.
Please, God.
This is God.
A chilling tale of unexplained death that baffled scientists, a visionary creator's darkest and most personal vision for a new kind of evil, and the movie studio that ultimately forced him to pull the punch, transforming a symbol of incomprehensible dread into a marketable movie monster. The story of Freddy Krueger doesn't start on Elm Street, nor did it spring fully formed from a screenwriter's imagination. It began in the brilliant and often troubled mind of Wes Craven, meticulously pieced together from a cocktail of unsettling real-world events and deeply personal fears. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Craven, a former professor with a keen eye for societal anxieties, stumbled upon a series of terrifying and tragic articles in the LA Times. Headlines like "Mysterious Fatal Malady Striking Hmong Men" and "Night Deaths of Asian Men Unexplained" documented a bizarre and horrifying phenomenon. It was striking Hmong refugees who had escaped the unimaginable horrors of the Vietnam War and the subsequent persecution in Laos, only to find a new, inexplicable terror waiting for them in America. Young, healthy men, mostly in their 20s and 30s, were dying suddenly in their sleep for no discernible medical reason. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was baffled, eventually classifying the ailment as sudden unexplained nocturnal death syndrome, or SUNS. In the Philippines, it was called Bang and Go. In Japan, Pokuri. But in English, the translations all pointed to the same horrifying conclusion: nightmare death. For the Hmong County, the explanation wasn't medical, but spiritual. They believed they were being attacked by a malevolent spirit known in their folklore as the Dab Sog, a nightmare entity that would press down on its victims' chests as they slept, suffocating them. This belief, combined with the immense trauma of war, displacement, and the stress of adapting to a new and alien culture, was creating a cataclysmic psychological event. One specific story, recounted by Craven, grabbed him and never let go. A young boy, having survived the Cambodian genocide, was so haunted by vivid nightmares that he forced himself to stay awake for days on end. He told his parents that if he fell asleep, the thing chasing him would finally get him. After days of fighting exhaustion, he finally passed out. Hours later, his parents were jolted awake by his blood-curdling screams. By the time they reached his room, he was already dead, having died in the throes of a nightmare. This wasn't a ghost story. It was a real medical emergency with a body count, a mystery that remains largely unexplained to this day. But this real-world horror was just one piece of the puzzle. Craven began to weave in his own childhood traumas. He recalled an incident from when he was a boy in Cleveland, looking out his window late one night and seeing a disfigured, drunken man in a fedora walking on the sidewalk below. The man stopped, sensed he was being watched, and stared directly up at young Wes, a terrifying and predatory look in his eyes. The man then moved toward the entrance of Craven's apartment building. A terrified Wes heard him coming up the stairs, and his older brother grabbed a baseball bat, but by the time he got to the door, the man was gone. The name Freddy was also personal, belonging to a bully who had tormented Craven in middle school. This grim cocktail of real death, cultural terror, and deeply personal fears coalesced into the seed of Freddy Krueger, a killer born not from fantasy, but from the unexplainable traumas of the human world. With this profoundly disturbing foundation, Wes Craven's original concept for A Nightmare on Elm Street was far bleaker, more psychological, and much more unnerving than the film we ultimately got. His earliest scripts leaned heavily into the hopelessness of the true story that inspired him, focusing on the sheer, unassailable dread of a threat that you could not fight, reason with, or even properly understand. And Freddy himself was terrifyingly different. He wasn't the quippy, one-liner slinging showman he would later become. In Craven's original vision, Freddy was a quieter, more insidious presence, a direct reflection of the silent, unknown dread of sons. His evil was meant to be felt more than it was heard. Even more chillingly, Craven originally wrote Freddy not as a child murderer, but as a child molester. Craven wanted to create a villain that embodied the most absolute, unforgivable, and sickening evil he could possibly conceive of. An evil that spoke to the sins of the parents being visited upon their children. The studio, however, grew incredibly nervous. This was the era of highly publicized child abuse cases in California, and they feared the film would be accused of exploiting real-life tragedies for entertainment. They demanded he change it, and so Freddy became a child murderer. Still monstrous, but one step removed from the specific taboo that Craven wanted to confront.
I grab the guy in my dream. You see me struggling, so you wake me up. We both come out, you whack the fucker, and we got him.
This darker, more grounded vision extended to his ideas for sequels. Long before Dream Warriors became a fan-favorite fantasy adventure, Craven's first pitch for a third film was profoundly dark and profane. His script involved a wave of teen suicides, with the victims all having dreamt of a far more menacing and less talkative Freddy before their deaths. He even pitched a meta-cinematic idea where Freddy would escape the world of film and begin haunting the real-life actors and crew, making a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. The studio rejected that concept as too cerebral, though Craven would famously resurrect it years later for New Nightmare. These early ideas reveal a creator desperately trying to grapple with profound, real-world evil and the nature of fear itself, not just trying to invent another movie monster. A grim, psychologically devastating story about inescapable trauma and repressed generational guilt wasn't exactly what New Line Cinema, a small studio at the time, believed it could market to a mass audience.
I need you, Jesse. We got special work to do here, you and me.
The battle between artistic vision and commercial impulse came to a head over one of the most critical parts of the film, the ending. The fight between Wes Craven and producer Robert Shea became legendary. Craven argued passionately for a definitive, thematic, and almost triumphant resolution. He wanted Nancy to be the hero who wins not through violence, but through intellect and courage. In his original ending, Nancy defeats Freddy by doing the one thing he can't handle. She turns her back on him, calmly says, "You're shit."
I want my mother and friend again.
What?
I take back every bit of energy I gave you.
And withdraws her fear, the very energy he feeds on. By ceasing to believe in him, she robs him of his power entirely. She would then wake up, walk outside into a beautiful foggy morning, and see her mother and all of her supposedly dead friends waiting in a car to take her to school. The nightmare would actually, truly be over. It was a conclusive, powerful statement about overcoming fear. Producer Robert Shea, however, saw things very differently. He saw the potential for a money-making franchise and argued that Craven's thoughtful, philosophical ending was so 60s and stupid. He insisted on one last jump scare to keep the door wide open for sequels. Shea wanted Freddy himself driving the car in the final scene, a move Craven flat-out refused to shoot. The franchise's financial future was prioritized over Craven's thematic conclusion.
No, baby,
I'm gonna stop drinking. I just don't feel like it anymore. Did I keep you awake last night? You look a little bit peaked.
The result is the shock ending we all know. Nancy gets in the car, the convertible roof, and Freddy's iconic red and green stripes suddenly clamps down, and her mother is violently yanked through the tiny window of the front door by Freddy's gloved hand. The monster wasn't beaten. He was just waiting for round 2. Craven famously hated this ending for the rest of his life, feeling it completely undermined Nancy's entire journey and rendered her hard-won victory meaningless. But this studio-mandated twist did more than just set up a sequel. It fundamentally altered the course of the character. It was the final step in the transformation of Freddy Krueger. He was no longer a quiet, unknowable symbol of a real, unexplained tragedy rooted in human suffering. He was now, officially, a marketable, unkillable, and ultimately franchise-friendly slasher icon. The deep, chilling horror of Sons was officially replaced by the jump-scare logic of a blockbuster series.
Hey, man. The fuck's wrong with you, dude?
So while we rightly love Freddy Krueger for his creative kills, his menacing presence, and his enduring legacy in horror, it's crucial to remember that his true origin lies in something far more authentic and unsettling. It's a story born from the real deaths of real people, the profound cultural trauma of a displaced community, a director trying to channel that existential dread into art, and a studio that ultimately chose to turn that art into a product. The monster we see on the screen is scary, but the truth that inspired him, the quiet, creeping fear of something that comes for you in your sleep with no reason and no escape, is a nightmare you can never truly wake up from. It really leaves you wondering, what is truly more terrifying in the end? The monster we can see coming, with his one-liners and predictable patterns, or the real-life horrors that emerge from the dark with no name and no explanation at all? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to dive into more unsettling truths behind your favorite horror movies, make sure to hit that subscribe button.